When German troops captured the Petit Ouvrage La Ferté, a northern outpost of the Maginot Line, on May 19, 1940, it underlined that the Allies were in imminent peril of defeat because the Nazis had been preparing for the warfare of the future, the Blitzkrieg, while the democracies had been looking backward strategically when they'd been giving the matter any thought at all. But it's actually more complicated than that, at least when it comes to France's fabled fortress, Maginot Line. This installation, Petit Ouvrage La Ferté, is probably the most famous point in the entire Maginot Line, partly because it's the only one that was captured by the Germans during the initial blitz into France, as combat engineers blew this particular cloche all awry. It seems to stand as a symbol of stupidity in strategic thinking. Just as the French learned the wrong lessons from the Franco-Prussian War and thought 1914 would be a war of maneuver, they learned the wrong lessons from Verdun and the trenches and thought 1939-40 would be a war of fortresses and fixed positions. But let's give the Maginot Line its due. This is the only part of it that was conquered in the initial attack. None of the Grand Ouvrages were captured. This one was only taken because of catastrophic decisions about the artillery and mobile units. The Maginot Line is a very impressive piece of work. Interlocking fields of fire, one ouvrage after another. You can see the one on the next hill from here. They could have protected one another very effectively. Unfortunately, what the French did during the battle didn't fit with what they were planning to do before the battle. Now, it's also true that this installation was never built properly. It had the wrong armament, a series of disastrous decisions stretching back into the 1930s. Even so, the Maginot Line did its work, forcing the Germans to go through Belgium, sparing much of the country that had been occupied in World War I. The problem is what the French army then did, for all kinds of reasons, ranging from stupidity to paranoid conspiracy theories, failed to utilize what the Maginot Line had given them. If you look at this fortification from the point of view of an attacker, you realize it's pretty formidable. With these weapons, guys like this could hold off any number of attackers, even if they did have tanks. And the custodian just told me that people criticize the Maginot Line. They say that it cost too much, it was ineffective. Well, he says it took about 6% of the French defense budget while it was being built, and it did keep the Germans and the Italians out of the parts of France it was designed to protect. On the other hand, they put 45% of their budget into the Navy, and what did it ever do except eventually get sunk by an ally because it wouldn't go over to the British Isles. As for the army, well, it was a formidable weapon, unfortunately in the hands of people who didn't know what to do with it. You put all that together, you realize the Maginot Line looks pretty good. Modern war is a pretty intense business, and an intensive business. This particular facility, which is a reasonably small one, it's in Petit Ouvrage, was held by about 100 men, all of whom died here in the end, most asphyxiated, as a matter of fact, deep down within the fort. The Germans attacked it with something like 250 heavy mortars. That's 2.5 artillery pieces, large caliber, for every single defender. And if you look up top, it's pretty dinged up, though a good deal of that's for the combat engineers with their explosives. A few 88 shells did hit, one lucky one went in through an aperture. But you can see that down here it's undamaged. The French built these forts to last, and last they did. And yeah, there's something very wrong with French strategic thinking. They did lose the war, they lost it quickly, they lost it disastrously. But it's not really the fault of the Maginot Line, and it shouldn't be remembered as a failure. It was just tied to a much bigger failure.